Ethan took a deep breath as he felt the gentle afternoon breeze pass through the thin curtains of the room. The country house provided a peaceful retreat, and the accumulated fatigue from the trip soon led him to a light and restorative sleep. What he didn't expect was that, upon waking, something would happen between him and his mother-in-law that would completely change the course of his stay there. And something very significant was waiting. If you want to know what happened with Ethan and his mother-in-law, stay until the end of this tale of love and betrayal, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our content. The days at the country house had always been peaceful, a welcome place to escape the hustle of urban life. Clara, Ethan's wife, had to return to the city to deal with work issues, leaving him alone with his mother-in-law, Linda. The relationship between Ethan and Linda had always been cordial, her natural elegance always putting him at ease. However, that afternoon, something felt different. He was about to discover that it wasn't just Clara's absence that was stirring his senses. While he was sleeping after dinner, the sound of delicate footsteps awakened him. As he opened his eyes, he saw Linda's silhouette in the doorway. Dressed in a light silk robe, she watched him with an enigmatic smile on her lips. For a moment, Ethan felt confused, trying to understand why her presence there seemed so out of the ordinary. "I didn't mean to wake you, Ethan. You looked so peaceful," Linda said in her soft voice, but with a hint of something he couldn't quite identify. The atmosphere in the room transformed in an instant. The sweet, light scent of her perfume filled the space, mingling with the fresh air coming through the window. Her gaze was intense, unlike anything he had ever experienced. Ethan, unsure of how to react, tried to sit up, but something in the way she walked toward him made him hesitate. "Is everything okay?" he asked, trying to normalize the situation, but the way she looked at him carried an insinuation he couldn't ignore. Linda chuckled softly, moving even closer. "You're alone here, and so am I," she said, her voice now lower, filled with something Ethan didn't know how to handle. She sat on the edge of the bed, her fingers lightly brushing the sheet beside him, her eyes locked onto his with a disarming intensity. What she was about to propose would make his heart race, leading him into territory he never imagined he would cross. Her enigmatic smile seemed not only to sense, but also amplify his growing discomfort. He couldn't ignore the fact that he was in a deeply delicate situation. His mother-in-law was unexpectedly approaching, seemingly with a more intimate intention than he ever could have imagined. "What's wrong? Are you nervous?" Linda asked, her soft voice filling the quiet air of the room. Her eyes sparkled with a mix of curiosity and something more. Ethan tried to laugh to ease the tension. "No, just tired, I guess. Long day." She tilted her head, studying him closely, as if she knew it wasn't just fatigue that had him feeling this way. "You've always been so polite, Ethan." Her hand casually glided along the sheet beside him, stopping near his arm, not touching him but close enough for him to feel the warmth radiating from her. "So, what were you doing before you fell asleep?" she asked, almost casually, but there was something in the question that sounded suggestive, as if there was a subtext he hadn't quite deciphered yet. "Oh, just relaxing," he replied, quicker than he intended, feeling his face heat up. But before he could formulate an excuse to end the conversation, Linda reached over to grab something from the nightstand. As she leaned, the thin fabric of her silk blouse slipped off her shoulder, revealing a strip of soft, fair skin. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Linda seemed unaware of the slip, or perhaps she wasn't in a hurry to cover up. She continued talking, showing no sign of embarrassment, but Ethan could barely hear the words. He quickly looked away, trying to focus on anything else. The ceiling, the window, the distant sound of the wind outside, but his eyes returned to her almost against his will. "Are you okay, dear?" The question came out softly, as if she were genuinely concerned, but there was a spark of mischief in her eyes. "Oh, yes, of course," he replied, coughing to clear his throat. Linda laughed softly, as if she were enjoying the situation, but before he could say anything more, the belt of the blouse she was wearing came undone, causing the fabric to slide gently down, revealing even more of her shoulder and part of her neckline. She quickly tried to adjust her blouse, her hands trembling slightly as she pulled the fabric back into place. Embarrassment filled the room, but Linda, always confident, let out a light laugh. "Oh, these loose belts. They never stay put, do they?" She looked directly into Ethan's eyes as she adjusted her clothing. Ethan, for his part, stood still. I guess not," he stammered, feeling a mix of nerves and tension coursing through his body. He knew he should get out of this situation as soon as possible, but something kept him there, caught between attraction and discomfort. Linda got up from the bed, but as she did, her feet got caught in the rug, and she almost lost her balance. Instinctively, Ethan reached out to catch her, his hands wrapping around her waist to prevent her from falling. The contact, though brief, was electric. For a second, they stood still, too close, their gazes locked. She let out a nervous laugh and adjusted herself in his arms, but she didn't pull away immediately. "Thank you, dear. Looks like I'm a bit clumsy today," she said, her voice soft as her eyes remained on his. A glimmer of mischief quickly passing through her gaze before she finally stepped back, regaining her composure. Ethan released her, but the touch of her hands was still etched on his skin. "No problem," he murmured, trying to sound casual, but he felt the weight of the situation increasing. Every movement, every word from Linda was loaded with something deeper. "I wonder what my daughter would think if she saw you holding me like that, so affectionately?" Linda joked, a playful smile on her face as she fixed her hair. The teasing was clear, but what she was about to suggest still hung in the air like a cloud about to burst. She leaned over him, her face just inches from his, and the smile playing on her lips seemed to hide something more. "You know, Ethan, I've always found you to be very special." Her voice came out soft, almost like a whisper. He swallowed hard, unsure of how to respond. "I'll be direct, dear." She adjusted the collar of her silk blouse, which threatened to slip once again. "I need something that Henry never could give me, and I think you could." She leaned in even closer, her lips almost touching his ear. "I want you, Ethan." Ethan's heart raced. The air seemed to vanish from the room, and for a moment, he didn't know what to say or think. "This can't happen, Linda," he finally stammered, but his voice sounded hesitant, lacking conviction. She smiled, a smile of someone who knew the battle was far from over. "Don't rush to give answers." Linda slid one hand down Ethan's arm, her touch light and teasing. "Sometimes desire speaks louder than any rule, don't you think?" His eyes met hers, and as much as he knew he should resist, there was something pulling him to her like a magnet. Linda brought her lips closer to his, hesitating for a second, as if expecting him to push her away. When that didn't happen, she let her lips touch his in a light kiss, but one filled with ulterior motives. Ethan felt the intensity grow, his hands instinctively rising to hold Linda's waist. The kiss, which had started timidly, quickly gained strength, their breaths mingling as they surrendered to the moment. When they broke apart, Linda's eyes were filled with desire. "I knew you felt the same, Ethan. There's no denying it." She looked at him, lightly biting her lower lip. "This is just the beginning." But before Ethan could say anything, a sound interrupted the moment. A cell phone vibrating on the nightstand. The low, insistent tone filled the room, breaking the bubble they had created. Linda glanced quickly at the device. "I have to take this." She took a step back, distancing herself from him, but not before casting one last loaded glance filled with ulterior motives. "Next time we meet, Ethan, let's finish what we started." "So, you think you can stay away from me?" Linda whispered, leaning against the office hallway wall, watching Ethan with that same mischievous look. They were at a work event, something casual, but she had planned every detail to get them alone. Ethan laughed nervously, glancing away for a second before looking back at her. "I don't know if that's a good idea, Linda." She stepped closer, her lips near his ear once again. "You're here, Ethan. If you really didn't want to, you would have stayed away." He couldn't argue with that. There was something undeniable between them, something that pulled him closer to her, even when he knew the consequences. "I can't stop thinking about you." Linda's eyes sparkled with satisfaction. "I know, dear. And do you think I don't feel the same?" She looked around to make sure no one was watching before pressing herself even closer to him, their bodies practically glued together. "I think about you all the time, Ethan. You're the only thing that makes me feel alive, like I haven't felt in a long time." Ethan sighed, torn between the desire to continue and the fear of being caught. "If someone finds out," he started, but Linda interrupted him, placing a finger over his lips. "No one will find out if you don't want them to." She looked deeply into his eyes, her tone heavy with ulterior motives. "Unless you want them to." Their secret meetings became more frequent, hidden from the gaze of those who knew them. Each time they were together, the tension escalated. Ethan found himself in an increasing dilemma. On one hand, he knew he should end it before it was too late. On the other, his growing desire for Linda consumed him. In the days that followed, Ethan battled internally. "This is wrong," he repeated to himself. But when he was with her, all rationality seemed to evaporate. He thought about his life, his wife Clara, how everything could come crashing down. But at the same time, each encounter with Linda felt like an addiction that made him want more and more. "I don't know what to do with these feelings, Ethan," Linda confessed as she lay in his arms during another hidden meeting. "I'm completely involved and in love. And you?" He held her tightly, unable to respond immediately. His thoughts were divided. He knew that if he continued, there would be no turning back. But at the same time, he couldn't pull away. "I feel the same, Linda," he finally admitted, and the words barely left his mouth. "What would you do in Ethan's place? Would you risk everything for a forbidden desire? Is Linda really in love with Ethan, or does she have other intentions behind her seduction? Share your thoughts in the comments. We want to know what you would do in this situation. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and see you in the next video.